Welcome to another week of Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamenenchev. Drew Brackett out this week, but Tom Castleman still here as always. We've got a big show, Tom. We'll be talking college football, some Heisman favorites, some playoff favorites out of the American League in baseball, NBA 2K ratings, betting locks of the week, and much more. But first, we start with probably our most interesting topic of the week.
Absolutely. I don't know if we actually got this from Drew, the hard working man, his official top five list, but we went through six through 10 last week. So one through five this week. I don't know if it's more suspenseful to go bottom to top or top to bottom, quite frankly, because I think one and two should probably be the same for all of us. I'd be a little bit surprised if we actually disagreed on one and two. So how about we just start there, and then we'll sort out the bottom half of that list right after that.
Are you sure? I kind of like doing it 5-1 because we did it the other way.
If you want to kill all the suspense, we can.
Well, I've got a lot of suspense on 5-1. I have a major.
I know. That's what I'm saying. We saved that last.
Okay.
For five on the list, I have Russell Wilson. The Seattle Seahawks let Russ cook a little bit last season with, I think, some mixed results. Certainly had some big games throwing the ball downfield to some very nice targets, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, but also ran into some issues with throwing some interceptions. I think a little bit more balance is necessary for Russ, but he's shown that even though he does make some mistakes, I don't necessarily fault him for that. I don't think that interceptions in and of themselves are necessarily bad things, given that they're usually a strong indicator of a quarterback pushing the ball downfield, or at least that's the case when you have an elite quarterback. I mean, Brett Favre, one of the greatest of all time, also threw more interceptions than anybody else because he is that kind of fabled, gunslinger type of narrative around his career. Russell Wilson, much more reserved in that regard, but I have him as 5 on the list. Definitely a top 5 quarterback. Would like to see the interceptions cut down a little bit, but I don't fault him for too many of those, given that he's actually trying to make plays downfield.
So I am actually very, very interested to hear the rest of your list because I thought, since I know you don't have Tom Brady in your top 5, I actually thought Russell Wilson would be your number 4. And that's why let's go with this. Let's start the fun stuff at the beginning.
Sure.
Why make people wait? Because I also have Russell Wilson at number 5. I am shocked to see you have him not have him, higher or lower, like a 4 or 3 is where I thought you were going to have him at least 4. He had an incredible season last season, tied for second in touchdown passes, a good runner. He's never missed a game in his career. That's something to talk about. He's very reliable. But the reason why I only have a number 5, because I think some rankings I've seen him at 4 or 3. He was 9th in passing yards and 8th in QBR. Also had those 13 interceptions you mentioned, which were a career high and tied for the 3rd most in the NFL. I mean, he got off to a great start when Seattle got off to a great start. But I think for me, I look at him, and this is a little bit different season this last season. I think he can go out and make some plays to win you a game, but I think Russell Wilson does a little bit better when he's a little bit more of a game manager. That's what we saw when they won the Super Bowl. They had a top defense, a top running back in Marshawn Lynch, and Wilson didn't make the mistakes. This last season, where he threw a career-high passing attempts, we saw him get some interceptions. We saw him get some fumbles, and we saw him have some games that aren't the best. So I think he's phenomenal because of the dual threat ability, because of the durability, the consistency, and he's got a beautiful touch on his ball. But for me, I only put him at number 5 because I think when he's not going to lead the NFL in passing yards. This is a guy that's, 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th, and he's got the targets in Metcalf and Lockett to perhaps do that. So if I'm going to put him ahead of guys like Josh Allen, Tom Brady, even Mahomes, he's going to have to prove that he can get more yards than those guys, and he simply hasn't done that. I think Russell Wilson, though, number 5 in a really, really heavy quarterback era, is still a pretty good accomplishment for him. Still a quarterback that you win because of, as you like to say.
Exactly. And another quarterback that you win because of, at least for one season, and this could end up being an outlier type of player. But I'm going to say Josh Allen makes it to 4 on my list. Dual threat quarterback, has always been capable with running the football. But if you look at his completion percentages, even going back as far as his college days, even into high school a little bit, typically in the mid to upper 50s, which isn't great. He had a completion percentage around, like, I think 68, 69%, something like that last season.
69.2.
Massive outlier. So the interesting thing going forward is, as of today, fourth best quarterback in the NFL. He could be out of the top 10 if there is some sort of massive regression to the mean, in a negative sense where he's not as accurate. I think that Buffalo getting him some good talent with Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley is a decent slot receiver. You have some more weapons for him in Buffalo. So I think that definitely helps. Having quality professional receivers helps. And it was his third year in the league. It's definitely a fairly common thing for quarterbacks to make a big jump. The key is going to be if he can sustain it and remain in the top 5, playing through the season and then beyond.
Yeah, I actually completely disagree with you on Josh Allen, just because I think I've got him at number 3. I'll get to him in a little bit, but I think that completion percentage is, I actually think it's going to be close to that 69% and maybe a little bit lower. But I think you kind of proved my point for me. It was his third year. He got used to it. He got a receiver like Stephon Diggs. I've got Josh Allen at a very solid number 3. I'll get to him in a second, though. My number 4 guy is Tom Brady. I think a lot of people want to say that like he's washed up. And I know on this show, I constantly say he's overrated when we look at the all-time greats, just because we equate everything to rings. And I look at guys like Peyton Manning, who are in his league. I look at a guy like Mahomes and Rodgers, who I think might pass him up. I think career-wise, Brady isn't the slam dunk GOAT. You can say he's the GOAT, but people act as if he's on another level. But I don't think he is. But as far as is he still very good? Yes. And I think one of my favorite stats that I looked up at is he was second in the NFL in throws in 20-plus yards down the field last season. Second best on those type of throws. So it shows me that his arm isn't dead. If he's lost a little bit, it's very, very small, very slight. I mean, he had 40 touchdown passes last season. That's the second most he's ever thrown in his career. I know, it's earlier in his career, it wasn't as much of a passing era as it is now, but he's played in this passing era for the last 4 to 5 seasons. Didn't put up 40 touchdowns. His yardage total, I think, was 5th best in his career this last season. And he was in a new offense. And he also played hurt. Reports coming out that Brady played hurt last year. So I look at him getting healthy. I look at him coming into a second year with that offense, which, by the way, everyone is back from last season's Super Bowl team on defense and offense. Really, really rare for a champion to do that. So I think for me, he's eventually going to slow down. I know Peyton Manning kind of slowed down in a hurry, sort of like one season, and you saw it was obvious. Drew Brees kind of the same way last season. So it's possible that happens to Brady. But until I see it, I'm still going to put him at number 4. And he's a solid number 4. I mean, I think we're talking about Mahomes and Rodgers, probably the 2 most talented players to ever play the position. So he's number 4 among a great class, if not number 3 to me. I think he's closer to 3 than 5 for me personally.
Absolutely. And talking about that third position, this comes with, of course, the healthy disclaimer that this is strictly about on-field ability. Basically, I treated this as if, I made this list right after last season ended. Of course, Deshaun Watson, I have him as 3rd on the list. Probably not going to play this year. I would not shed a tear if he doesn't. He is tied up in some 22, 23 right now civil cases, with potentially some criminal cases coming as well, as far as misconduct with various masseuses. But if we're going to talk about the talent alone, and I'll keep this brief because I don't find him to be a savory individual to talk about anymore. And just really quickly, like, what a big downturn and his kind of like story arc of being, a homeless kid, Warwick Dunn, a former NFLer, helped get his family into some affordable housing. And that's something that kind of launched him into his success at Clemson and now in Houston, where he on the field succeeded, with a great receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, but even put up numbers last year, yes, in garbage time, but he played exceptionally well and was probably the lone bright spot for one of the Lone Star State's teams. So Deshaun Watson on talent is third on my list for that, and just really unfortunate that the choices that he's made in his life have made talking about him in a sports sense so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this last week. I think 1 through 6 to me are very close, certainly 2 through 6 at least. So you're kind of splitting hairs between Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady. I think Mahomes and Rodgers maybe a step above the rest, but I think 3 through 6, you're splitting hairs. I had Watson number 6. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I do think winning is a team game. Obviously, I've went on the record and said that. But clutch play does matter, and Watson didn't really play very well in the clutch. I mean, that was a really bad team that he played on. So some of those statistics he put up, he did them because he had to, because they didn't have a good running game. They didn't have a good defense. But for me, he still didn't make that many clutch plays. They were a team that was 4-12 in the NFL. I think they were 4-12 last season. And 2 years ago, he blew a 24-0 lead against the Chiefs. So really, really impressive stats, but 12th in QBR, despite being second in pass yards per game, did kind of stick out to me. So, but for my number 3 guy, I've got Josh Allen. I think you're selling Josh Allen short. I think for me, if you add up his touchdown passes and touchdown runs last season, only Aaron Rodgers had more. And then you add up his rushing and passing yards, only Watson and Mahomes had more. So second in total touchdowns, third in total yards, third in QBR behind Rodgers and Mahomes. So pretty much most of the metrics, he was number 3 in the NFL last season. And the big difference was the completion percentage. He always has the cannon arm. He's got the best arm in the league along with Mahomes, can throw it the farthest. The question mark is, how is his accuracy? Well, 69.2% was incredible. 4th best in the NFL. That's what's crazy. And yeah, he might dip a little bit, but even if he's at 67, 68, I think he'll be mid to high 60s as opposed to low 50s. And I think it helped that he was in that offense another season. It helped that he finally got a target in Stephon Diggs. He never had a number 1 before. He had really, really bad targets in Buffalo. So I think it shows what he can do when he has playmakers. He has absolutely no weaknesses. He can run fast. He's strong. He's got a great arm. The one weakness was the accuracy and maybe decision-making. Well, he showed that maturity this last season. He showed it to me. He led his team to the AFC title game. He's a very solid number 3 for me right now. Josh Allen, many great things to come. I think, obviously, with Watson and everything that happens, his image is taking a big hit. Rodgers, Brady, Wilson, even Russell Wilson, deceptively older than we think. I think Allen has the chance to be the number 2 quarterback in the National Football League, right behind Patrick Mahomes for the next 10 to 15 years.
Absolutely. That mantle is all going to be his for the taking. As of right now, that second spot is occupied by one Aaron Rodgers, a begrudgingly excellently talented rival to the north for us Chicago Bears fans. We Chicago Bears fans? Us Chicago Bears fans.
Us Chicago Bears fans, me and you. The proper grammar there, Tom. You should be on top of the grammar.
Every now and again, I doubt myself even when I'm right. Aaron Rodgers had a fantastic season last year when it seemed like Green Bay was giving him every reason and every excuse to not have a great season, drafting his eventual replacement, not really investing in additional weapons. I mean, it's Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and out of nowhere you get, Robert Tonyan coming up as tight end and putting in some work. But still no consistent second or third receiver on the depth chart that really separates themselves as being quite exceptional. So basically, it's an all-time great quarterback with a great wide receiver and a great running back. Basically, that's how they're operating an offense. And that should be something that defensive coordinators should take away. And believe you me, they are trying to take away Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones on a given week. The fact that they haven't been able to is a testament to how great Aaron Rodgers is as a quarterback, as much as I hate seeing that twice a week every single NFL season.
Yeah, us Bears fans have had a hard time with Favre and then Rodgers.
That's we Bears fans. And
We
this, in that case,
fans.
yes,
Okay,
we're on it. We're on it.
We, in this case, the grammar
Yes.
Nazis, as we say. There's the crazy statistics. The Bears have had like dozens of quarterbacks since Favre and Rodgers. And what's crazy is Rodgers is basically Brett Favre minus the interceptions. He's actually better than Brett Favre. Who would have thought that Brett Favre's replacement would be better than him? I mean, that's how good.
Certainly not Brett.
Yeah, certainly not Brett Favre. No, he didn't think so. But yeah, I mean, I think Rodgers is a phenomenal player. He's last season's MVP. He led the NFL in passing touchdowns and QBR. He takes care of the ball. He makes all the throws, and he can run around to pass, run to run as well. I mean, he makes a lot of really, really good plays for Green Bay. He's kind of like Manning and Brady. Even Drew Brees, they kind of make other guys better. And you see their numbers with those guys versus without them. So obviously, that's part of being a great player, raising the games of your teammates. So for me, Rodgers is a very solid number two. In fact, I think if it weren't for Patrick Mahomes, I think you can make a case for, and certainly Brady and Manning have a resume that Rodgers may or may not surpass. But I think he's the second most talented player I've ever seen play football behind Patrick Mahomes. I think him and Patrick Mahomes are very, very similar players in that they can make the sidearm throws, they can run to pass. There's not a single throw that either can't make. The reason that I like Mahomes a little bit better is I think Mahomes simply, his arm strength is just a little bit stronger. I think Rodgers' touch is just as good, if not better, but sheer arm strength, stick a throw, like put a laser throw in. I think Mahomes is a little bit better. And especially if we're talking about this stage in their career, I think Mahomes is a little bit better athlete. And we'll get into Mahomes here in a little bit. But I think Rodgers is a very, very solid number two. Nothing to be ashamed about. The only question mark for him is if you've got Mahomes and Rodgers at a virtual tie, which I do have Mahomes a little higher, but the one question mark is what's going to happen after all these offseason issues where he wanted to get traded. They basically agreed for him to come back, and he kind of slammed the team in the press conference. He's missing the entire preseason. It's interesting to see if that affects him a little bit. I don't know that it would affect him a lot, but I think anytime where the chemistry quite isn't there, that might hurt you a little bit, especially if we're trying to rank you, potentially you could be number one. I think that has to contribute to him being number two as well.
Yeah, we'll see how those things certainly play out. I wouldn't mind if there was a little bit of drama and Rodgers tumbled down the quarterback list here. But going to number one on the list, Patrick Mahomes, I think would have been our consensus pick. As contrarian as Drew likes to be with you and kind of get your ire up a little bit. You'll give all the numbers, I'm sure, on Mahomes. So for me, it's pretty concise to say, you know it when you see it in terms of an all-time great quarterback. And it's the additional, hard to tell where coach begins and quarterback ends in terms of that kind of discussion. But he makes Andy Reid look better, and I think Andy Reid, quite honestly, makes Patrick Mahomes look better. That's not to say Patrick Mahomes wouldn't look good playing in other offenses, playing around the league, but could you imagine him if he were in Jacksonville, if he were in Cincinnati?
It's a perfect marriage.
Yeah, he would probably still be pretty good there, but we wouldn't be talking about him the way we're talking about him now as the best quarterback in the NFL, the most talented perhaps of all time, and he's got a long enough career to become the greatest of all time. I know it's semantics, wordplay between best and greatest, but I like to engage in them anyway. But yeah, it's the arm, it's the feel, it's the instinct for the game that he can throw no-look passes Sometimes it gets him into a little bit of trouble. I remember one play where he threw a no look to a wide open Travis Kelce and it just completely was off target. But that's just like the insane, crazy level of talent that he has. So Mahomes number one on the list, and you'll give all the real hard numbers as to why.
Yeah. So one really statistic that really stands out is he's a gunslinger, right? We think of him as a gunslinger,
Sure.
but he only had 6 interceptions last season. There were a couple drops by cornerbacks, but overall, he really took care of the ball. He's never had an interception issue really any of his seasons. If you look at touchdown to INT ratio, his is through the roof. So that's what really stands out to him is he can make the throws, he can take the risks, but he's so good that it doesn't matter. And he's also become a very smart quarterback that sort of underrates, that's an underrated part of his game because I think every once in a while he might make like a absolutely crazy play, but I think a lot of the times where he does make those crazy plays, he actually knows that he has the talent to do it. So it's not even so much of a gunslinger play, it's actually the smart play. It's how confident he is in his talent. So we think of him as a playmaker, but only 6 interceptions. That's like wildly impressive for Mr. Mahomes. And you look at him last season, second in first in passing yards per game in the entire football league. He was second in QBR. The reason Rodgers was ahead of him is because Rodgers just simply got a lot more touchdowns. I think the Chiefs got a few red zone touchdowns where they ran the ball. I think Mahomes' numbers actually could have been a little bit better. Touchdown passes is sort of like a deceiving stat sometimes because, who do you go to in the red zone? And as far as what you were talking about earlier, the reason why Mahomes is such a great fit in Kansas City is because he like sort of plays ad lib. He ad libs like a sports anchor with ad lib, and I think he's so good at that. And when you have a guy like Tyreek Hill who's so fast, he's more easily able to ad lib and get open. And Travis Kelce has the mind of a quarterback. I know he's played that in the past, and Kelce knows what Mahomes is going to do when he ad libs. For people that say that, well, the Chiefs are that good, anyone can do it. I think Alex Smith is the perfect example. Yes, the Chiefs were a playoff team. Yes, the Chiefs had a winning record. Yes, Alex Smith put up good numbers. But you take a look at Alex Smith's numbers and you take a look at Patrick Mahomes' numbers. I mean, they're insanely different. Mahomes is thrown for easily 10 more touchdowns a season, easily 1,000 more yards a season. And it's led to the success in the postseason. The Chiefs were not able to take that next step with Alex Smith as their quarterback because we know the postseason is different than the regular season. And Mahomes' numbers are even better in the postseason. I mean, he had an off game in the Super Bowl, but ironically, like he actually played pretty good if you watch the game. I know we had a couple misses, but for the most part, the offensive line was not blocking, and he had a touchdown that was dropped. 2 touchdowns, I think, were dropped by his teammates in the end zone. His stat line looks a lot better if you factor in those drops. So I think that's what separates him and Rodgers to me, though. I think as good as Rodgers is a little bit more cautious, kind of like what I said with Russell Wilson. I think if you're looking for a guy to go out and do a comeback win for you and win the game for you, I think Mahomes is more likely to do it. It's one of those deals where if you had the best talent in the NFL and you put Rodgers and Mahomes there, maybe you don't see as much of a difference. But I think if you're on like an average team, I think Mahomes just makes 2 or 3 plays more a game than Rodgers does. He has that ability to make the crazy play more than Rodgers does. And again, like I said earlier, his arm strength is a little bit better. He's a little bit clutcher. I think he's a little bit more of a leader to me. I know that's hard to define, but it seems like his teammates really rally around him. Whereas with Rodgers, fair or not, again, we're not there. I can't say for sure, but there has been sort of that question mark of the dynamic of him and his teammates and, what that is. There's no question marks about, Mahomes. They're all tweeting and loving on him. Like his teammates are constantly tweeting about him and how much they appreciate him. it is a special thing the Chiefs have there, and it was nowhere near to that special with Alex Smith because they reached a total of 0 Super Bowls with Alex Smith, 1-0. And then with Mahomes, obviously they've got 2 Super Bowls in the last 2 years and 1 win.
Exactly. Well, moving from pro quarterback talk into probably what's going to be a heavy college quarterback talk, college football and the Heisman. Looking at some preseason young talented players that could be taking down one of the most prestigious awards in the country. Common to believe the way that you framed this was for finalists, which I believe it's 3 guys make the final, right? Have I prepared properly for this, or am I short some names?
Uh-oh. In my head, I thought it was 4, but I didn't even double check. Interesting.
I know that they shifted it. It used to be 5 people, and then they had it where it's 5 people make the vote, and I think it went down to a final 3. I don't follow college ball that closely. I've got 3 names for you, so we can just kind of run with whatever we have, and
Excellent.
you can run with whatever you have.
Well, first off, I want to say that if you read these lists, I mean it's all quarterbacks. According to the odds makers, the top 9 quarterbacks for the Heisman are all quarterbacks. The top 9 spots. Devontae Smith out of Alabama won the Heisman last season as a receiver. I don't think we'll see that this season. I know Pitts, Waddle, running backs like Harris, Etienne, Hubbard, all gone. The one player that could emerge is the number 10 spot. That's Texas running back Bijan Robinson. He had 703 rush yards as a freshman, but only 8.2 yards per carry. So look for him to get the ball more there in Texas. But I think it goes down to quarterbacks, and I think the obvious one is Oklahoma's Spencer Rattler. He's the heavy favorite. He had a great first season with Oklahoma. Struggled a little bit early in the season, but down the stretch was phenomenal. Oklahoma has a lot of talent back. He's the one that will for sure make the top 3. I'll have a few more other guys, but I wanted to get your take on who the top 3 or 4 are, as I'm going to look up that exact number while I let you talk. Did you find it?
Yeah, so as of last year, there was 4. There was Mac Jones, Devontae Smith,
right.
Kyle Trask, and Trevor Lawrence. So yeah, I'm coming up 1 short because I almost never watch college football. I work a lot of Saturdays, so that's not my sport of choice. But I agree with you, Spencer Rattler. Absolutely, I think this is going to be his season to do it. I mean, he plays in the Big 12, which even though the Big 12 might not be anymore in a couple of years, they still have a history of not playing solid defense. So I think he's going to put up numbers, and he's going to put up numbers throwing the ball, and also I think a little bit running. He's not necessarily a true dual threat quarterback, but he did run for 6 touchdowns last year, so he can get the ball across the goal line in a couple different ways. The 2 other guys I have on the list, UNC quarterback Sam Howell. I think he's a little bit of a dark horse. He puts up numbers, and UNC obviously much better known for their basketball program than football, but he's kind of putting them on the map a little bit. And if we were having a more expanded playoff, perhaps UNC might be pushing for that a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how they match up with Clemson, which leads me into the next name on the list for me, which is DJ Uiagalelei. I have him 3rd as my preseason Heisman finalist list type of thing. We only saw 1 game out of him, a big one against Notre Dame. We saw 2. We saw a second one.
Boston College was the first game.
Oh, I only remember the one that was an outstanding football game. I don't remember very many Boston College games because I'm not sure if Boston College remembers very many football games.
Doug Flutie does. Doug Flutie had one of the most legendary college
going
moments.
Back to 1980s something, 70s something. I don't even remember when Flutie played.
I think it was the 80s because he played
in
the
early
2000s.
80s.
No, late 80s.
Was it late 80s?
Yeah, he played like 6 years ago.
I remember there was something with him in the Chicago Bears right around that, like right after that 85 Bears team. So it had to be like mid to late 80s, I feel, when he played college.
You are right, but I think he played so long. I want to say he played late 80s to early 2000s. I'm looking up right now.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right. But DJ Uiagalelei is 3rd on my list. Definitely saw the big upside against a Notre Dame team that was no slouch. So those are my 3 guys. And just kind of comment. It took a special season like Devontae Smith to win a Heisman for somebody who's not a quarterback. For many reasons, everybody's all gaga about quarterbacks, and it's almost one of those things where it's like you have to almost be a professional level quarterback to win the Heisman. I don't think that necessarily is the best thing for that award. I kind of like seeing it spread out a little bit more. I know that different positions have different awards, including the quarterback, though. So I think that we need to kind of open our scope a little bit more as a viewing audience to great seasons that aren't quarterback driven. It's just since that's called the most important position on the field, we just attribute the best season in college football to that. Don't necessarily think that's right, but that is the way that it is.
Yeah, real quickly, if you hear that barking, that's my dog
That's
Messi.
messy.
So I don't know if you're able to hear him or not.
A little bit.
A little bit. He normally stays quiet for the show, but today he's on something. But 1 year of having him was yesterday. Big celebration. We took him to the dog beach. So it was really fun. But as far as college football, I actually watched quite a lot of college football. I think the NFL is probably my favorite sports league. You know, not counting Messi soccer games, wherever Messi plays.
Sure.
That's obviously can't miss TV, as is
D-Day PSG.
PSG. He might make his debut on Sunday. I'm just a little bit excited about it, but the NFL probably the best league in the world. But I think college football to me is something I actually really enjoy. I've covered it a lot of my career. I've missed some games because I've been covering like Mizzou football, Arkansas State football, but I do keep my eyes on it, and I think I agree with you first off that maybe we should look at other guys but quarterbacks. But that's just how it is. Usually, if you look at NFL MVP, how often do we have a non-quarterback? Not very often. It takes literally like record-breaking seasons by like Adrian Peterson, to get MVP, stuff like that. So for me, I did come up with 4 guys. So that's what I thought it was, and I'm right. So I think the obvious one is Spencer Rattler out of Oklahoma. I like how you brought up Sam Howell, because if you look at the odds, he's in the 5th to 6th range, 6th according to most online websites. So I look at him as sort of the guy on the outside looking in. I think he sneaks in back-to-back seasons with 3,500 yards and 30 touchdowns or more. He's got beautiful touch on his ball, can really, really place it where he needs to. He sort of got that Russell Wilson air throw. I look at the other guy, to me, as it's going to go down to Bryce Young and CJ Stroud for Alabama and Ohio State. They're both 5-star recruits. They're both phenomenal players. One of those two is going to sneak in. I'm going to guess with Young just because we've seen him play. We haven't seen Stroud play at all. He didn't throw a pass last season, but certainly both of those guys are capable. But to me, I think Rattler is the heavy favorite, but I think the Heisman is going to be hands down DJ Uiagalelei. I hope Lele. Say it for me.
Uiagalelei.
Uiagalelei.
Yep.
Oh, that's the best I've done so far. I practiced before the show last night and this morning. I might just call him DJ so I don't butcher it. But he was, by the way, the top recruit coming in last year. If you look at last year's recruiting classes, he was the number 1 recruit coming in. And I think Young and Stroud were right behind him. But he did something at Clemson that Trevor Lawrence never did in his illustrious career. 439 passing yards against Notre Dame. Trevor Lawrence's high was 404. 29 of 44, 439 yards, 2 touchdowns at Notre Dame, no picks for him. I know it was a double overtime game, so it helped his numbers a little bit, but they lost against Notre Dame because their running game was terrible, their defense was terrible, and they had 3 fumbles by his teammates, uncharacteristic plays. So he actually played just as good, if not better, than Trevor Lawrence. You might think like they lost because Trevor Lawrence didn't play, but it had nothing to do with Trevor Lawrence not playing. The other game against Boston College, by the way, he was 30 of 41, 342 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. So, I mean, this is a guy who put up nearly 800 passing yards, 4 total touchdowns, and no interceptions in his 2 starts last season. He is phenomenal. And one thing to keep in mind with him, compared to, Oklahoma's quarterback, Ohio State's, Alabama's, maybe Rattler at Oklahoma, you can argue maybe his competition is about the same. Granted, Big 12 defenses, although they did improve last season. But at least compared to the Alabama and Ohio State guys, Clemson doesn't play in as good of a conference. He's going to have a chance to stat pad against some weaker teams. I know we'll talk about this game next week. This will be a big Heisman moment game. Clemson against Georgia, the opening week of the season. That's going to be crazy. The one guy that's getting way too much love is JT Daniels out of Georgia. He's like number 5 on the quarterback odds for Heisman. And I don't know why he's that high. He's got 25 touchdowns and 13 picks in his college career. He did play well last year in 4 games for Georgia, but that was against some of the weaker teams in the SEC. I'd like to see him play against Florida and Alabama before I put JT Daniels near a Heisman favorite. So I think it's going to be the quarterbacks, the usual suspects, but I think Rattler is the favorite, but I think DJ for Clemson is a more talented player, and I expect him to win the Heisman, which is crazy because Trevor Lawrence actually never won the Heisman. For all the success he had at Clemson, he never won the Heisman. So he can win the Heisman when Trevor Lawrence never did. And I don't think Deshaun Watson won the Heisman either.
I don't think so. No, I know that in his last season, this actually caused his stock to drop a little bit heading into the draft. He had like 13 picks or something like that. He had a lot of interceptions in his last season at Clemson. So yeah, I don't think he won one either.
Yeah. So I think he's a guy to look out for. I think obviously with the Heisman race, there's always someone that emerges that we never expected or saw coming. That happens every year. So there's going to be somebody.
Smith. We didn't expect that last year.
We didn't think he'd win the Heisman. Certainly not. And I mean, we knew about him as a proven player, but didn't think he'd win the Heisman. Kyle Trask for Florida, by the way, like he ended up being, I think, like 5th in the Heisman voting. No one would have thought him being anywhere near that. And Mac Jones, I don't think people thought Mac Jones was that good either. So certainly not out of high school because Mac Jones and Kyle Trask got no love out of high school. So someone else is going to emerge. I'm looking forward to it. Next week, we'll talk about who we think is going to make the college football playoff. And again, that Clemson-Georgia game, opening weekend of football, that is going to be a fun one for sure. Right there, you can earn your Heisman points right off the bat. Either of those quarterbacks, either of those teams, I'm really, really looking forward to that game. I think it's going to be sort of a different college football season. I've seen tweets today about Mizzou and how people are back on campus, and it just feels so different. We're going to have more fans in the stands. We'll have that sort of environment that we're used to, and we'll see how that affects teams and players. But I'm certainly looking forward to the college football season, and I'm looking forward to the Heisman race and probably looking forward to Alabama winning again because that's just what Alabama does. But we'll talk about that next week.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of teams that have dynastic tendencies, the New York Yankees, out of seemingly nowhere, are on a tear. I believe winners of 9 in a row, 9 out of the last 10. Are they the team to beat in the American League now as they're kind of coming on down the dog days of summer?
Yeah, first off, I phrased this question as American League just because I think the Dodgers are still the team to beat in the MLB, and I think we'd obviously agree with that. I think you look at what the Dodgers did after getting Max Scherzer. They just had their 9-game winning streak snapped. As far as the Yankees, I think they got better at the trade deadline, and it shows. They needed a few more bats. They added Joey Gallo, Anthony Rizzo, Garrett Cole, and Aroldis Chapman. Both have missed some time this year. They're both back. As well as several other players. So injuries was part of the issue with them. And they got so much better at the trade deadline. So they have to be one of the favorites. My short answer, and I'll pick one team in a little bit, but my short answer is that there isn't really a clear favorite out of the American League. I think it's one of those where I look at the 4 top teams and it's like 25, 25, 25. I mean, I look at the Astros, Yankees, White Sox, and Rays are all in the mix. I mean, Astros, Yankees, Sox, all within 2 games of each other. The Rays are 3 games ahead of the Astros for the top record in the AL. But I look at those 4 teams. not much separates them. I know the White Sox and Yankees are a little bit lower as far as record goes, but that's because they've dealt with injuries. We saw Jimenez came back for the White Sox. We've seen Luis Robert come back for the White Sox. Yasmani Grandal probably not far behind. Rodon, I think their starting pitcher star, he's coming back too. So I think the White Sox and Yankees were a little bit behind because of injuries, but they are getting healthy and they got better at the trade deadline. The Yankees getting Gallo and Rizzo, the White Sox getting Craig Kimbrel to make that bullpen even more impressive with Liam Hendricks. Kimbrel's still settling into that role in the 8th inning, but they're a very good team, obviously. And you have the Rays and Astros, who were the AL representatives in the last 2 World Series, are a huge threat. The Astros, the last American League team to win the World Series. So out of those 4 teams, it's pretty even to me. I mean, who is there one that stands out, or what do you think?
Yeah, I basically approached this question from a Sox fan perspective right now, which is what teams am I afraid of? Am I afraid of my team facing in the postseason? Tampa Bay Rays, for whatever reason, well, I know the reason. They don't have any big name players, which is why they don't get that level of respect. So if the White Sox and Rays matched up, I mean, I totally could expect, or not be surprised by the Rays to win, but I would expect the White Sox to be able to win that one.
The Rays just beat them 2 out of 3 this weekend.
They did.
They won one of them by like a huge margin.
They did. And that's one of those questions where it's going to be, okay, once everybody's kind of healthy, if everybody's healthy, with Carlos Rodon coming back, with Tim Anderson not sitting with some rest, with some soreness in his legs, once, Robert and Eloy are fully kind of integrated, although they've gotten out to some great starts, once it gets to playoff series time, I expect the White Sox to be the team to beat. But in terms of teams that scare me, I think the Astros are probably the scariest, most consistent team, just because they've been pretty healthy all year long, and they're pretty balanced on both sides of the diamond, so to speak, in terms of their offense as well as their pitching. The Yankees, they're a hot team right now, and they're definitely scary, but there was also a point earlier in the season where none of their big stars were really performing up to the way that they ought to have been performing. I think Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo certainly add elements to their offense, but they're kind of similar elements to what they already had. When you think of the profile of Rizzo and Gallo, you think power over contact. You have the same thing with Stanton, Judge, Sanchez, even Gio Urshela. So I think it's one of those things where if the Yankees are running hot, there's no place to hide with that lineup. But we've also seen them run cold, and teams that hit home runs and have lower contact rates can be vulnerable to a team that gets a lot of strikeouts. By the way, the White Sox bullpen, I think, gets like 33% strikeout rate. That could be a problem in a postseason series. So those are the things I'm kind of looking at. I think Astros are probably the scariest team in the American League, though.
Yeah, I think first off for the Yankees, a lot of it is going to go down to Giancarlo Stanton. I think he's massively underachieved in New York. Part of it has, of course, been injuries. But if he's playing at an MVP level that he used to, that lineup looks much scarier as opposed to as good as Rizzo is. Maybe Gallo is MVP level, but probably just outside it. I think Judge is the best hitter in that lineup, but Stanton is just as good as him if he's playing at his best. As far as this question, I kind of looked at it too. I don't know. I want the White Sox to win also. I'm a Chicago fan. I know I like both teams, the Cubs and the Sox, but I am a White Sox fan, and I think they have all the pieces to win. I think they've got great starting pitching. They've got a great lineup, and the bullpen was maybe the one question mark, but now they've got 2 great relievers instead of 1 great reliever. So I think the White Sox on paper have the ability. Ryan Tepera, by the way, also pretty good, who they added from the Cubs. So they have the potential to win it all. But for me, there's just something just has rubbed me wrong about how they've played the best teams. I know they've been partially shorthanded, but the White Sox have a losing record against teams above 500. And we've seen them in recent weeks lose against the Yankees. We've seen them lose against the Rays. We've seen them lose to the Astros earlier this season. So how are they going to do against those teams? Again, I think it's all 4 teams are about even to me. I do think you're selling the Rays a little bit short because guess what? They have the best record in the American League. So
I'm
they may not
aware
have
of that.
a fully brand name superstar, but they're getting the job done. And that's hard to question. And they were in the World Series last season. But I actually think the team that is the most likely, if I had to pick with my head, not my brain, or rather, hold on, my head, not my heart, is what I meant to say, aka my brain, would be the Astros. After the cheating scandal, I've really had a hard time being a fan of the Astros. Not that I was per se a fan of the Astros before, but it sort of made me want to cheer against them. And I do think maybe that helped them a little bit, but they're also really, really good. It's one of those things where it helped them, but it probably didn't help them as much as people think. And now they're determined to like prove people wrong. And they've got the second best run differential in all of baseball behind the Dodgers, who are in the other league. We're not even talking about them. They're first in baseball in runs scored. They're fourth in ERA, but first out of the American League in ERA. So we're talking about top teams in the American League. I know the Rays have a little bit better record, probably because they're clutch and they find ways to win. But you look at the Astros, they've been the most dominant team in terms of who hits the best, who pitches the best, who wins by the most runs. And they've got so many proven players in the playoffs. Zach Greinke, Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa. I mean, they've got so many guys who have delivered on that big stage in recent years. Something we haven't really seen from the White Sox in recent years. We haven't seen from the Yankees. I know the Rays had it last year, but to me, the Astros, if I had to pick one team as the most likely team to make it out of the American League, it is the Astros, even though I'll be pulling for the White Sox.
Absolutely. So moving on to some 2K rankings.
Yes.
I know exactly why
I
this
snuck
is in
this
the
into
lineup.
the rundown.
I'll allow it. Even I don't know. I don't know if it says anything about anything the way that they rank things, but I mean the players do take them seriously. I know Bradley Beal not terribly happy with how he has ranked in 2K22.
Neither is Trae Young.
Out. Neither's Trae Young. True.
And LeBron's not happy about his and like Curry's and Kevin Durant's. LeBron like wants everyone to be rated 99 apparently.
That is something that kind of caught my eye when looking at the rankings. Full disclosure, the most recent iteration of any sort of basketball video game I have is with Dame Lillard on the cover, NBA Live 15. So I am a solid few generations behind. What do you have?
I've got some old school NBA here.
Is
NBA Live 07, Tracy McGrady.
The latest one you have?
It might be. I'd have to look through my games, but I just happened to see this on my desk as I was kind of cleaning through a few things.
Yeah, it's a shame. My PS2 is, I don't think, ever going to be coming back to the land of the living. I had a nice setup with, was it NBA Live 06 with Dwayne Wade on the cover? I also had 04 with Vince Carter that I got exclusively because I had Carmelo Anthony's NCAA Live 2004, where Carmelo's on the cover and you could take a player from the college game and like import him into the professional one. But anyway, I get beside myself. I thought 99s would have been warranted, especially when you saw the playoffs that happened last year. You see Giannis with an all-time great NBA's finals. You have Kevin Durant putting on a show with the other two members of the Big Three down. You have LeBron James giving it his all, even though he's shorthanded without Anthony Davis. A little bit more on him later. Steph Curry putting up the season that he put up with, again, without his best sidekick. Actually, more on him later, too. Am I almost getting good at doing this teasing thing? I'm surprised that there weren't higher rankings than I believe 96 is as high as it's gone for the best players in the game. Common, what do you think about the rankings so far?
Yeah, so first off, I think I looked at a breakdown of the rankings the last few seasons, and they haven't given a 99 in quite a while. I think last season and the season before, I think it was like LeBron and Giannis were like 97 as the top players. So they just don't want to give out that 99 like Patrick Mahomes gets in Madden and deserves it. So, I mean, I probably agree with you, but I'm less concerned about the number 96 versus 99. I'm interested in looking at who does 2K think is the best player in the game. and they've got LeBron, Durant, Curry, and Giannis basically in a four-way tie for first.
I think that's fair.
Which
I think that's
honestly I
right.
think is pretty fair. I don't think much separates any of those guys. I mean, you'd have a hard time saying that. I mean, we saw them play on the same team, Durant and Curry. They put up similar numbers, and we saw what Giannis did last season, and we know who LeBron James is. Let's not forget that just 2 years ago he was winning the championship, and the season before that, when he got hurt, people said he was done. Comes back and wins the championship. What does LeBron have in store for us now? And I think before he got hurt, LeBron James was an MVP candidate. Let's not forget that either. So having a full season to recover, I think at this point, it's the same deal as Tom Brady. Eventually, they're going to slow down. Maybe they've lost like a half step. But until you show it consistently, I still think LeBron James is in the conversation for best player in the world. I think those four, to me, are about even. I look at the next stack of players: Joel Embiid, Kawhi Leonard, and Nikola Jokic were all 95s. Then you look at Luka Doncic, James Harden, and Damian Lillard are 94. So what I took offense to with the rankings is the disrespect shown towards James Harden and Luka Doncic. First off, this ranking, and again, the NBA is a lot like the quarterbacks. Like 1 through 8, there's very little bit of a difference. The best player in the NBA and the 8th best player in the NBA, there is like a very, very small difference between them. It's just the gap is so small. Like, people say like Durant and Harden is the example. Harden was getting MVP talk last season when they were on the same team. Basically, 2K is telling us Durant's the best and Harden's tied for 8th best. I think those two guys are very close. I do think that Luka and Harden deserve to at least be 95s. I think they're for sure in the Leonard, Jokic, and Embiid area just because of their playmaking ability. I think defense gets a little bit overblown in the NBA. I think great offense beats great defense. As you saw, Luka Doncic back-to-back years completely shredded Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and company. That defense that they had, also Patrick Beverley, other guys, like defensive stoppers, they had to stop Luka. They couldn't stop him. And I think Kawhi Leonard might be slightly overhyped because of that, because Kawhi Leonard doesn't really set up his teammates the way Luka Doncic and James Harden do. And I think Embiid shouldn't be ranked as the same as Jokic just because I think he's not as good of a shooter and not as good as setting up his teammates the way Jokic is. So I probably group Jokic, Luka, and Harden in their own category. And then I put Leonard and Embiid down there with Dame Lillard at 94. So I would sort of like switch up the tiers. And I think Luka and Harden are so good that I don't necessarily have a huge problem if they were 96 with the top guys. But I know they have to have tiers for the sake of having tiers. And if we're going to have tiers, I think Luka and Harden belong in the second tier instead of the third tier. And I look at Embiid and Leonard, I put them in the third tier instead of the second tier. Keep in mind, though, this is video game rankings. This is how good you are at your best. It doesn't account for all of Joel Embiid's injuries that he has. Obviously, if Joel Embiid is healthy, we might have a better image of him. But I still think Jokic does more things than Embiid. Jokic needs to be ranked higher than Embiid. And of all those guys in the top 10, I know he's a center, but Embiid is the worst shooter. Embiid is the worst passer. So I actually would put Embiid probably as more of like the 8-9 guy along with Lillard, as opposed to having him in that second tier. He's like third tier for sure for me.
Yeah, for me, I look at basically like two players that kind of sort of stood out. I thought my guy Anthony Davis should have been a little bit higher.
Yeah.
I know, again, this is video games, and like the defense doesn't matter as much necessarily in game as it does in real life. But like we saw what happened to the Lakers and LeBron James when Davis was not healthy and not playing. Things just didn't run very well. I mean, he's one of the great sidekick players in the NBA because he doesn't necessarily need to have the ball in his hands to dominate a game. He's a capable passer, but he's really excellent at working the post and running the floor end to end. So I thought Davis should have been higher. And then I know that they're not really like factoring injuries all that much, but Klay Thompson, I thought, is ranked pretty high for somebody who's coming off of a pair of leg injuries and hasn't played in a long time. I think that that's one of those things where, maybe you give him like a little bit of a lower ranking with like a higher potential upside or something like that. I think he's an excellent player. If he were healthy, this is exactly where I would have him pegged. But the fact is, he's not. We don't know how good his shooting is going to be if there's any little bit of a dip off from either rust or just with the leg injuries. He's not going to be as consistent. We don't know. So that's something that I just thought, through no fault of his own, obviously, with a couple of freak leg injuries, I thought he would have been a little bit lower on the list. But by and large, I look at these rankings and I'm like, this is about right.
What are you looking at as far as Klay Thompson and Anthony Davis rankings? Because I'm on a website that because I wanted to look up Russell Westbrook's ranking too, and the website said that Westbrook's ranking isn't fully out, and this website
So I might be looking at a little bit of a different one. The one I was looking at, Anthony Davis was like 11th on the list, and then Klay Thompson was somewhere. I think he was somewhere around like 88 or something like that, as far as his number overall. So
you may have a more updated one, because the one I was looking at didn't even like rank Westbrook, and it didn't rank Davis. So maybe that just went in.
I found that one too. So I wasn't exactly sure which one was the latest, but
yours is probably more accurate.
We'll see.
I probably agree with Anthony Davis. I think Davis, honestly, to me, is easily as good as Embiid and Lillard. I mean, throw Davis in there for 94s, no problem. I completely agree with that. As far as Klay Thompson, it's hard to say, but I think Klay Thompson is so reliant on his shooting, and he's such a catch and shoot master that I don't think he loses the ability to catch and shoot. So I don't know that the injury is going to hurt him as much. As they say in sports, if you can shoot, you can shoot. I think he's done enough in this league to warrant being ranked a very good player. So I'm fine with Klay's ranking. To me, I just thought it was cool how they had 4 guys about the same, because that's kind of how I feel about the NBA guys. Because I watch an NBA game, and it's like one day I'm like, well, Curry's definitely the best player. The next night you watch Durant, you're like, oh, well, Durant's the best player. Then you watch LeBron. It's like, oh, well, don't count out LeBron. And then it's like, you've got a guy like Dame Lillard, who might be like in my rankings, number 9 best player in the NBA, whatever, tied for 8th. Like there's times where he looks like the best player in the world. That's what the NBA has. I do think Trae Young, I think, was like 13th on the list. I saw maybe 14th. He was ranked in the 80s. Let me see on the list I have. He was ranked 89, and Jason Tatum was 90, and Zion Williamson was 89. I probably would have Trae Young ahead of Zion and Jason Tatum. He was one of the guys not happy with his ranking. For the most part, I think they got it right, but I do think that they're selling Luka and Harden a little bit low. I think they definitely. Granted, it's by 1 point, but I think I have a hard time saying that Embiid, Jokic, and Leonard are ahead of Luka and Harden, personally.
Yeah, I feel like they could pretty easily be on the same tier.
Sure.
I think that'd be pretty fair. All right, on to your favorite segment, Locks of the Week. I know Drew texted in his numbers for this upcoming week. Let's say, I believe on the recap. Well, I'll just let you do the recap because you have.
I do the recap.
Results.
I'll let you give Drew's picks in your own.
Sure.
So recap wise, man, you and I are now tied for first. Drew Brackett's way in the back. Not a very good week for the show. I know the week before you and I both went 3-0. This week was not the same. I was 1-2. I had the A's over the White Sox. The Sox winning 5-2. I do want to say real quick about the A's White Sox. Thoughts, prayers, everything goes out to Chris Bassett. The A's ace getting hit in the face. Looks like the cheek. And, that could have been much worse. He could have lost his vision. He's got his vision. So hoping for all the best for him. Nonetheless, though, the White Sox winning 5-2. Indians over Twins. I had the Twins winning 5-4. And I had Giants minus 1.5 over the Mets. They won 7-5. So 1-2 week after my 3-0. Tom, you are 1-1-1. You had Blue Jays minus 0.5 over the first 5 innings against the Nationals. You got that one. Was that the one that was a tie? Well, that was
No,
wrong.
that was very, very wrong.
That was wrong.
Like 8-2.
8-3. No, 8-3 after 5 innings.
Yeah.
You had Tigers over Angels in the first 5. They were tied at 2, so that was your tie. And you had the Brewers to win over the Cardinals. That was 2-0 Milwaukee. So you are 1-1-1. Drew Brackett 1-2. Completely missed the Eagles Patriots game. He had Eagles plus 1.5. The Patriots winning 35-0. He had Vikings minus 2.5 over the Colts. The Colts winning 12-10. And then he had Bills plus 4.5 at the Bears. So you got that one. The Bills winning 41-15. I didn't want to talk about preseason quarterbacks because we talked about it the last 2 weeks, and I'm sure we'll talk about it next week. But what a showing by Mitchell Trubisky against the Bears, completely dominating Chicago. Not a good look for the Bears. I think it is one game. Obviously, the Bills are one of the best teams in the NFL, but it almost shows you that the Bears have bigger issues beyond the quarterback. Justin Fields almost got killed. How hard a hit he was in that game. So the Bears got to fix their offensive line. They got to fix their receivers, their tight ends. I think Trubisky definitely should not have been drafted as high as he was. I think Trubisky is not an NFL star, but I do think Trubisky maybe isn't as bad as some think, as you witnessed in that game. But as far as locks of the week, what do we have this week? You want to start with yours or Drew Brackett's first?
I'll go with Drew's. And I don't know if you put these in here with the intention of me having to read them or you, but this will be interesting nonetheless. So for MLB Monday night, he went with a game. I believe this is at plus money. He has the Seattle Mariners over the A's on the money line. I'll skip down to the one I know I can pronounce. Saturday, English Premier League, Newcastle versus Southampton, under 2.5 goals. So there's your EPL under, Drew. Friday night, Serie A. Serie A.
Soccer.
Okay.
Udinese
versus Venezia, under 2.5.
Let me pull it up and try and get you the pronunciation there. So we know he's at worst going 1-2 because the Premier League, that's his go-to. Like Drew Brackett's record in Premier League is probably 80% win percentage at least. His record in all his other picks probably 30%. So he needs to go to that one. Let's see. He texted it to the group message. Let's see. Venezia. I think that must be a promoted. That must be a promoted team because I don't even recognize them. They must have come from the second division. Probably aren't going to score a lot of goals then, so maybe.
And Drew's got something on the under there. For my picks, I'm going to go with an all baseball card, 2 tonight, 1 tomorrow. So for tonight, you can get Cubs at minus 135 in the first 5 innings. The Cubs win games when Kyle Hendricks is on the mound. He's the only player on this team I trust. And the Rockies are an appalling 14-45 on the road. So give me the Professor and the Cubs in the first 5 innings. I don't trust much about the Cubs, but I'll trust their starting pitcher for one night to stop the losing streak. I will take the Astros, that dangerous team we talked about earlier in the show, to cover 1.5 runs at home versus the Royals at minus 130. Daniel Lynch for the Royals is not good. Zach Greinke for the Astros is good. So I'll go with the Astros winning by more than 1 run. And then tomorrow for baseball, 8:24, I will go with the Red Sox covering 1.5 runs at home versus Griffin Jacks, my new favorite fade. He of the 5-point-something ERA on the Minnesota Twins. The Red Sox, who have tumbled into 3rd place in their division but are still fighting for a wild card spot, to win that by more than a run as well.
First off, a couple things stand out with your picks. One, Griffin Jacks, I tried to fade him, I think, on our show a couple weeks ago, and he did be bad or good, depending the way you think of it. So it didn't work out for me. So as bad as he was, At least when I picked him, he actually pitched pretty good.
Mhm.
But the other thing that stands out, and it comes as no surprise because we tend to think alike. Maybe that's why our record is tied right now. I have not
Probably.
one, but two of the same picks as you.
Really?
So
All right, go for it.
So I've got the Cubs over the Rockies as well. I actually got it at minus 125 on
For the whole
DraftKings.
game or for first five?
Whole game. Okay, so that's why our
Okay,
odds
so we're
are
a
so
little bit
different.
different. Yeah.
Okay, so I have the
Mhm.
Cubs minus 125 the whole game on DraftKings. Look, the Cubs are a horrendous baseball team right now. We know this. But the Rockies, Tom, there's something about them on the road that is just
Mhm.
appalling. They're 14 and 45 on the road. This is the team that has a winning record at home. They're 14 and 45 on the road, 31 games under 500. They can't seem to get it done away from home. Their pitcher tonight, Antonio Senzatella, get this, he's 0-6 with a 5.80 ERA on the road. Just horrendous. Kyle Hendricks, I think he's leading the National League in wins.
Mhm.
Crazy to think about on a bad team. He's 14 and 5 with a 4.04 ERA, but that ERA is actually deceptive. He has had like 3 or 4 outlier starts where he did really bad. A lot of those coming earlier in the season. So if you look at how he's been pitching for most of the season, he's been rock solid. So look for him to pitch well. The Cubs to win the first 5 innings for you. Win the entire game for me. I certainly feel better about your bet. I'm not as big of a first 5 innings guy as you are, but the Cubs bullpen might blow it. But nonetheless, we're back in the Cubs tonight, so that may be a risky move, but we've done mostly good when we team up together. Of my 3 lines, the one line that I like the most is the Astros minus 1.5 over the Royals, minus 130 on DraftKings. Look, the Astros are 15 games over 500 at home. The Royals are 14 games under 500 on the road. The pitching matchup greatly favors Houston here. Zach Greinke, 11-3 with a 3.43 ERA, going up against Daniel Lynch, who you mentioned. He's 3-3 with a 5.12 ERA. Greinke going up against the Royals, his former team. How's that for a little motivation? And he delivered last time out against them. 6 innings, only 1 run. They did lose that game 3-2, but that was a rare night for that Astros offense. They lead baseball in runs, batting average, and on base percentage. Look for them to tee off against a really, really bad pitcher there for the Royals. Astros should win by 2 or more, no problem. And then for my third pick of the night, I'm going to fade Drew Brackett. So that's why all 3 picks are very interesting. And I'm going to pull this up right now because I wonder if they changed pitching matchups, because the A's and Mariners earlier yesterday actually was at minus 115 for the A's money line. It's now minus 140. I think until football season starts, we agreed at minus 150. I know
we've not officially changed that.
Yeah, we're moving down to minus 130 for more official picks, but I did have it at minus 115 when I looked it up. So somehow, let's see. Well, the pitchers haven't changed, so I don't know what prompted such a heavy line movement in that game, but it's going in my favor because it means the A's are higher favorites than before. So I'll take the A's at minus 140. You know how much I love my pitching matchups, right? Well, this game, I'm not going to use the pitching matchups because the A's pitcher is really bad. The Mariners pitcher is a little bit better, but I simply think that the A's are a better ball club. They're 3 games ahead of Seattle in the standings, but I think Seattle's been one of those lucky teams. Seattle is well over 500, but they're minus 62 on the run differential. The A's are plus 71. A's are also 8 games over 500 at home. Seattle 3 games under 500 on the road. So I do think a home field advantage should help the A's. I know we talked about the 4 teams in the American League that we think are the favorites. Maybe we sold the A's a little bit short. I think certainly they're the 5th team in that mix. So I like the A's to beat the Mariners at home tonight. I like the Cubs to beat the Rockies at home. And I like the Astros at home, minus 1.5 over the Royals. So we're going with a little home cooking tonight.
Absolutely. And this takes us into our statements and salutes of the week. Do you have anything for salutes? Because I do, and I think it's going to be a little bit of a treat.
Yeah, I actually do have a salute. And I'm continuing the theme on this show that I'm sort of praising and saluting guys that you guys traditionally don't associate me as being a fan of. And part of that is I'm not a fan of their fans. I'm more so against their fan base as against the people in general. So my salute is salute to Kobe Bryant. This would have been his birthday. He, of course, passed away. One of the most shocking deaths. There's two deaths that I remember, at least as far as celebrities, that really hit me. One was Robin Williams. The other was Kobe Bryant. It's one of those moments like September 11th. I remember, you remember like where you were, what happened. It was just so shocking. I do think Kobe Bryant is a fantastic player. I think he's a little bit overrated, just like I do with Tom Brady, but that doesn't mean that he's not one of the all-time greats. I don't know that I 100% love his leadership on the court. He's kind of got that tough love like Michael Jordan, but different things work for different people. I do want to commend Kobe Bryant for who he was as a father. It really seemed like off the court, he may not have been best friends with his teammates, but he went above and beyond for his daughters and his family. He did have that mistake earlier in his life with his wife, but he seemed to get it back together. So salute to Kobe Bryant. I think I saw this online and I should have written it down. So if I messed this up, I'm sorry. I'm 95% sure it would have been his 43rd birthday today. So salute to Kobe Bryant, the Black Mamba, forever a legend, and certainly someone that we'll never forget.
Absolutely. For my salute, it goes out to Miguel Cabrera of the Detroit Tigers, joining the 500 home run club. He sits just 45 hits away from the 500 home run 3,000 hit club, which leads into trivia time.
How many guys?
How many guys are in this club? You've probably seen this floating around on Twitter, but
I missed it.
The 6 other players.
6 other players.
I'm willing to give out a couple of hints if you want them.
Can I take all my answers without the hints first?
Go for it.
How well I do. By the way, that was going to be my guess. I was going to say it was 6 other guys. I swear I didn't see this on Twitter. I swear.
Yep.
So first mind that comes to mind is Barry Bonds.
No.
He didn't get 3,000 hits?
No.
Oh.
He had too many walks in his career. That's the insane thing about this list. You think of some of the all-time greats, they don't get enough hits because they got walked so much.
Okay. Hank Aaron?
Ding, ding.
Okay. Babe Ruth?
Nope.
No, not enough hits because he had a really high batting average. Maybe all those years being a pitcher and also getting walked hurt him too.
Yep. He had a great on-base percentage, but nope, not 3,000 hits.
Okay, so 500 homers, 3,000 hits. Well, I don't know. He might have gotten walked too much, but Ken Griffey Jr.?
He's not on the list either.
Not on the list either.
He also had a bunch of knee injuries. So I'll give a couple in. So one is in a similar era to
Willie
Hank
Mays.
Aaron. Willie Mays, that is the one.
Okay.
And then you have 2 contemporaries of Miguel Cabrera, 2 players that have played along for most of his career arc.
So I got 4 more guys to name, right?
4 guys to go, yeah.
Alex Rodriguez.
Yep.
Okay. So another guy in this era, not Barry Bonds.
Still currently playing.
Still Albert Pujols.
Albert Pujols, that is correct. And then the other 2, I would not have gotten either.
No,
but you
I want clues. Okay, Ted Williams?
Not Ted Williams. So for the clues, both of these guys were still technically playing while you and I were alive.
Okay.
One of them, I can give you both of them played for the Baltimore Orioles in their career.
Oh, okay. Brooks Robinson?
Nope.
No. Oh, Cal Ripken didn't have 500 homers. What am I saying?
He didn't have homers, no.
No. He actually had like 400 something though. Okay. Baltimore Orioles. Oh, is the switch hitter guy, right? I'm blanking on his name right now. Oh my God. He was a switch hitter.
I'll give it to Eddie Murray.
Eddie Murray. Yeah.
And then the last guy also played for the Cubs for the first couple seasons. He was an Oriole, a Ranger, and a Cub.
Rafael Palmeiro.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Not bad.
I
love trivia.
Oh, it's so fun. Like when I heard that, it's just like I was trying to go through the names. It's like I knew like Hank Aaron. I actually forgot about Willie Mays. I just didn't even think of him. I knew Albert Pujols. I forgot A-Rod actually got to 3,000 hits.
How
'Cause
many
I just
hits
think of
did
like, oh
Barry
wow.
Bonds have?
Oh, that's a good question.
I should look it up. I
That's
mean,
like
because he had a really high batting average. I know like the walks is what did him in, but he played for quite a while, and I think was he a 300 lifetime hitter? I'm pretty sure he was.
something like that. Okay, so he's just short. He retired with 2,935 hits.
Oh my God! And what was
So
his
he
average?
just
Over
missed it.
300, right?
Had to have been. Let's see what it says. This is taking me to his Wikipedia page. This will take me forever. This is what I get for not having
Your notes.
baseball reference.
Oh, baseball
We'll do the
reference.
quick read. I'm pretty sure he was batting over
I'm
had
a,
500 stolen bases in his career too, which is
yeah.
insane. Well, that's
It's
what steroids will do to you.
well, he had the stolen bases before he started using steroids.
Yes, this is
And
true.
he went from like hitting 40 home runs to hitting like 60 or 70. But he
Yes,
was always
it
a
was
great
insane.
average hitter and a great stolen base guy. Oh my gosh, wow. He just missed out on several things.
Yeah,
298 batting average. So how about that? So
quite a career though.
yeah.
Statement of the week. So I don't have a statement. It's more of a question.
Yeah.
It's more of
Go
like a
for it.
discussion prompt. So if you want to do your statement to knock that out first, and then we'll get into the question because that's also going to be, I think, a fun thing to get into.
Yeah, I have a feeling that yours is going to be better. I love the statement of the week. I will be honest, this is not one of my favorites this week, so we'll let you cap it off. My statement of the week is and one of his teammates put this out on Instagram, I think, or social media. But how did the Denver Nuggets and NBA MVP Nikola Jokic not get an NBA Christmas game? The Christmas game list out 5 games, 10 total teams. We've got guys like LeBron Davis, Durant, Harden, Kyrie, Giannis, Luka, Curry. A lot of stars are on display, but they still missed several stars. Jokic, probably the most glaring miss as the MVP of the league. But how about Damian Lillard or Kawhi Leonard not getting a Christmas game? We have teams like the Knicks, the Jazz, the Celtics. I mean, what are they doing on NBA Christmas night? I was about to list the Hawks, but then I thought to myself, well, Trae Young is actually pretty entertaining. But I don't know that Trae Young is as good as Jokic or Lillard, maybe on a given night, but I think consistency-wise, he isn't. So I don't know. I thought the NBA didn't really respect Jokic, much like when they ran a Taco Bell ad during his draft pick when he was a rookie. Not giving him much love now, and I do love Taco Bell, by the way. So that tells you that I'm not being like biased because I'm a Taco Bell maniac, my favorite fast food restaurant. But Jokic should have gotten an NBA Christmas game. I also look at Michael Porter Jr., a young, exciting player. You look at Murray coming back from injury. The Nuggets are a fun basketball team to watch. Unfortunately, we won't be watching them on NBA Christmas. I hope your question is a trivia one again. We got to put in a trivia segment because I love trivia.
We should add that into the mix. Like there are two things. There are two things coming out of your statement I want to address. First off, if I were a member of the Nuggets or the Trailblazers, I'm cool with not having a Christmas Day game because Christmas is my time of year. I kind of low-key don't like that they do an NBA slate on Christmas Day because I think that the players should be home with their families, but I also think the people that actually work the games, the staff, the concessions, the parking attendants, I think they should be home with their families too if they want to be. And so,
well, what do you feel about Thanksgiving football then?
See, that's difficult. That's another difficult one because I do like watching Thanksgiving football more than Christmas basketball. So you're catching me in a hypocritical moment here, Common, and I will appreciate that. You're absolutely not wrong.
No, and I said that to my girlfriend as a joking matter. I told her well, Thanksgiving is for football, Christmas is for basketball. I mean, I do
I mean,
Personally,
Christmas has more of like Christmas obviously is like has the religious component to it too,
well, and it's
which
the
I will
better
now fall
holiday.
back.
All due
It is.
respect to Thanksgiving, Christmas is my favorite holiday.
It
And
is.
I do think the
Yes.
NFL obviously has less games than the NBA. So I do prefer Thanksgiving football over NBA Christmas.
Hmm.
But it's just like a devil's advocate, like,
That's
well,
it's a
we
fair
have
one. It's a
we
fair
have
one.
Thanksgiving football, why not NBA Christmas? It's one of those like really, really complicated things. If I were like one of those workers or players, I can sort of get it, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't
that's fair.
know.
No, no, no.
Well,
That's
and
that's
now
a
the
that's a
NFL,
fair
the
point that you.
NFL has started doing the last couple of years have been doing like one Christmas game too. So
Yeah,
the league is just thinking about its money. It's certainly not thinking about the players and the staff and
I'm
their
aware.
families.
I'm aware. I
So,
just think it's a bit of a shame. The other thing is it'd be an interesting topic. I don't know if we like would want to even cover it on like one of our shows, but like rank like the top fast food restaurants that you would go to, or do like a
absolutely,
fast food draft type of thing of like which chain.
absolutely.
Because I know our number one overall picks would all be really, really different. I think that'd be a fascinating thing.
Real
As on,
quickly, I'm not going to
yes.
ask you for a whole breakdown, but do you have a number one? Maybe
Oh,
we'll spoil it for the viewers if we do this. What's your number one?
oh, my number one. Anybody? It's a recent vintage, but Popeyes is my go-to fast
Is
food
it the
restaurant.
spicy chicken or the chicken sandwich? Is that what reeled you in?
No, it's just I like them far, far better than KFC. I go mild because I can't handle the hot stuff. I'm
Okay.
not too ashamed to admit it. But no,
I
I
handle
usually
the heat.
go for bone-in chicken, just straight up bone-in chicken. Always get an extra couple of biscuits because
Mm,
I just go ham for biscuits. So
I
yeah,
love
Popeyes
biscuits
is my
too.
place to go.
Okay. Popeyes is up there for sure. Yeah. I like fast food chicken in general. I do agree it's better than KFC, but I do think there's several other good chicken places,
Oh, for
at least
sure.
on par with Popeyes, like Chick-fil-A. And if you've ever had Slim's Chicken is a good place too that I like.
Is that a regional thing? I've never even. I
They
think I may have heard of it, but
I thought it was a
never
regional
been.
thing because they had it in Arkansas where I lived,
Hmm.
but they have one in Plainfield where I got
Oh,
like
okay.
my car taken in for some work and I noticed it. And I used to eat it in Jonesboro once in a while. So I actually was there like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And it's like the first time in years. No, Columbia has one too, actually. I lied. So I did have it in Columbia too. But it was my first time, at least since moving back here in the last year, that I had it. So we will look into that. I will tell you this, though, completely honest. I think we should put in the sports trivia for sure. We can think
Okay.
about maybe the fast food thing. That might be a good thing to do
That's like a
around March
one-off bit.
Madness.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
a one-off bit. But yeah, absolutely sports trivia. As for my statement of the week, this comes out of my archive of things. Just like if it's a little bit of a slower week, things to talk about, or if I don't have a statement, I'll just throw out a question instead. So,
Sure.
my question of the week, and it's an either
Mhm.
or. Would you rather see your favorite athlete bow out gracefully from their career, decide when they are done at or around the peak of their abilities? Or would you rather see them fight to the bitter end, battling diminished skill and ability, deteriorating health? And while the effort is laudable, it still just stinks to see some of your idols so far past their prime. And I know this hits particularly close to home to you with an update on the medical health for one of your favorite athletes pictured behind you. So
Roger Federer.
what would you prefer? I know like you want to see Roger Federer as often as you can, but at this point, would you rather just see him say, you know what, I've had a wonderful, great career. It is time for me to listen to my body because he's planning on coming back, right?
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
So what would you rather?
So while I think about that, let me ask you a question because the first
Sure.
thing when he talked about like deterring athletes
Hmm.
playing deep into their career, what's the first name that you thought of? Because or maybe they have you guess the name that I thought of because it was one of those where you're saying that it's like ding, a name popped in my head.
Okay, so I've had some time to think about it, so I can't remember the exact first name that I thought of,
Mm-hmm.
but
Give me a few names.
a couple of names. I mean, Michael Jordan is kind of a difficult one because he still played well with the Washington Wizards, relatively speaking. But oh no, now I'm blanking on the other one. It was Peyton Manning. Yeah, why am I blanking on Peyton Manning?
Well, Peyton
Peyton
Manning
Manning
only
was
did like
one.
1 year though, and he won the Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, but like to see that year happen was just like kind of a shock. Another like I'm trying to think like what other athletes I can think
Think
of.
basketball. Think basketball. Went to the
Think
same college as
basketball.
Michael Jordan. Was literally like a prop, maybe like top 5 basketball player. I don't think he was ever MVP. I don't think he was ever considered the best in the game. But I think in
Vince
his
Carter.
prime, Vince Carter, yeah, Vince Carter played for probably
He
about
did
7
play
or 8 years as a bench player.
a
Well past his
ridiculously long
prime.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting because like he both had the longevity in his career, but he also decided when he was going to be retired. Like it wasn't like he just kept trying to come back from injuries and just kept getting like worse and worse and worse. I guess
hmm
this is more of like a almost like an individual sport question over a team sport question in a lot of ways because it's just like how often can you just try for it and come up short?
right.
I don't know. Like
So
I know what I would prefer from my
yeah,
favorite athlete.
what's your thing? Then I'll give you mine.
I like the narrative of riding off into the sunset of saying, you know what, I've had a great heck of a career. I've either I've won a championship or a title or whatever the sport is. Oh, Tiger Woods obviously is a great example of this.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
even before his car accident, was it early this year or late last year? He had the car
It was this
accident.
year, early this year. I think it was
Um,
like right around the
yeah,
Super Bowl. I think
something like
it
that.
was
Yeah,
after the Super Bowl. I think.
right, but like, even before that, like he came back and at the on the one hand, it was just like, man, he keeps going and going and going and like, but then he had like out of nowhere he wins a tournament, and so it's just kind of like I kind of prefer an athlete to just say, you know what, I've had my run, as opposed to just kind of hanging around and ending up as a bench player or somebody who occasionally is like, oh, they make a surprise run to the semifinals or something like that. I prefer they decide. I prefer calling your shot and determining, okay, I'm going to go now and you know be with my family time, all that sort of stuff. I think that's what I prefer out of my favorite athletes.
So first off, I think it 150% depends on whether it's a team sport or an individual sport. Because I think
Okay.
if it's an individual sport, I like to have my guys stick it out. Just
Mm,
because on an individual sport, a lot of like a sport like tennis and golf, they look at your majors, and I think it's pretty legendary when you have that sort of possible last run, as we saw from Tiger a couple years ago. We saw from Phil Mickelson just this last year at
yeah.
50 years old, winning a major. I think if Federer at 40, I know it might be a long shot at this point, but if he comes back and just wins one more major, I think for individual sports, you're judged by the amount of majors you have. So I think your legacy isn't necessarily hurt by as much as maybe not being good later on in your career, as we've seen with Tiger Woods. We talked about this on an earlier show. You and Drew both were convinced Tiger Woods is the best golfer ever. You had him among, was it your Mount Rushmore of athletes? I think you guys both had Tiger Woods, maybe. Is that the segment that we
Probably.
did? Nonetheless, you guys were very
Yeah.
high on Tiger Woods, and it's because of what he did in his prime. You didn't
Hmm.
really focus as much on what he did later on in his career. So, as far as
Exactly.
the individual sports, I think the total majors matters more. Now, I don't want Roger Federer to like be a really, really bad player. Like, I don't want him to be ranked like 50th, 100th in the world. But if you look at what he's done the last few years, you know, even this most recent tournament, he made it to the quarterfinals of the French Open, or was it no? I think it was round the 16 French Open quarterfinals of Wimbledon's. I mean, you're talking about top 8, 16 in the world. It's not like he's a scrub. I
Hmm.
do think it's obviously harder to watch when he loses. Nothing is better than when your legend watches it. But I think of the same thing. I think of Barcelona soccer. A guy like Gerard Piqué, Sergio Busquets. Those two guys are legendary Barcelona players. Both of them are past their prime. Sometimes it's hard to watch them. And you look at Iniesta and Xavi, Barcelona legends who left after they exited their prime. So they're actually remembered much better at Barcelona than Piqué is, who now is all of a sudden getting flack from the fans. And Iniesta and Xavi, albeit, are better players than Piqué ever was, but they are just go down as legends because our last memories of them was them being very good players.
Hmm.
So it's hard. I want to say if you're one of the like all-time great players, like when I saw that question, I thought of Michael Jordan after the Bulls because I think there's post Bulls Jordan and pre Bulls Jordan. I think some of us don't really count the Wizards' ears as
Hmm.
Michael Jordan because I think that was the perfect example of someone riding off in their sunset, still in their prime. In that case, I think Jordan probably shouldn't have come back. He had nothing to gain. I guess you could say, like, at 40, he makes the playoffs again with the Wizards, but I don't know. The ending with the Bulls were so perfect. What he should have done
Yeah.
is maybe gone one more year because winning 4 in a row is even cooler. I don't know if he would have done it, but no one would have counted it against him for sure. I think Jordan probably missed out about 3 prime years with 2 separate retirements, and the Wizards, he was done at that point. It kind of depends on the athlete because if we're talking about like a truly all-time great player like a Michael Jordan, I would probably say ride off into the sunset so that we remember you as the dominant athlete that you were. But if we're talking a guy like a Vince Carter, who is a very, very successful player, a Hall of Fame player for me, but sort of like a lower level Hall of Fame player,
Hmm.
not like someone who's a top 20 greatest player of all time, not even top 30 for Carter, frankly. I mean, maybe you throw him in the top 50. I'd have to really look at my basketball history, but not one of the all-time greats, like someone who is a Hall of Famer, but
Hmm.
doesn't get mentioned among the greatest like ever, is never in that GOAT debate. A guy like that, I actually appreciate what Vince Carter did. So I think for him, I would rather have that guy stick it out, the passion, the love for the game. But if we're talking about like an MVP, an all-time great player, then I would like
Hmm.
to see them retire. I would say what is
Well,
cool though about a sport like soccer, though, you have the
mhm.
alternative of going to like the MLS because that's what there's rumors that Messi will do
Semi-retirement.
the semi-retirement. Although the MLS is a much harder physical league than people realize,
Mhm.
but for soccer players, that's an option where you still play, but you don't play at the top league of the world, and you're still sort of able to dominate. That's a decent alternative. But
Right.
for like NBA guys and NFL guys, I do think sometimes it's kind of hard to see the truly all-time great struggle. So I kind of agree with you there. But if we're
Mhm.
talking about like a very, very good player, like a not a true all-time great, I'd rather see him stick it out.
Well, and then that also calls into question kind of like their circumstances around their careers. What about Dirk Nowitzki if he sticks it out an extra year and plays a year in Minnesota, for example? Or you're like, do you want
Like
to see
Emmett
that?
Smith on the Cardinals.
Emmett Smith on the Cardinals, even Frank Thomas on the Blue Jays or the Athletics. What are some other ones?
Stick it out with your team. That unless you're Vince Carter,
Yeah,
because he's already been on many teams.
yeah. Like he'd already been on several different teams by that point in his
Carl
career. But if
Malone
it's
on
like,
the Lakers.
yeah, like
He
just
did go
straight up
after a
ring
champ.
chasing.
He did ring chase, and I don't blame him for it. But that's
Uh
like
huh.
a weird uniform. Allen Iverson, by the way, played on a host of weird teams at the end of his career. The Grizzlies, the
Yeah.
Pistons, the Nuggets. He was still
Exactly.
good on the Nuggets,
Yeah, he
but
got
like
traded to the Nuggets, but yeah, like that's another weird one. I'm trying to think sports like out like there's like the classic ones of like Joe Montana for the Chiefs
he was
type
still
of
good
thing.
though for the Chiefs, though.
Well, yeah, but it's also like just like
Yeah,
maybe just
sure.
selfishly. Like, can you imagine Derek Jeter playing for anybody other than the Yankees, even if he had another year left in him, type of thing? So I think
Yeah,
that also kind of plays a role in it too. Come to think of it, so
sure.
I
Oh,
don't
it's
know.
an
I thought it was
interesting
just like
question.
a little bit of an interesting question. I've got others in here, so I'll
Keep
probably
them
go dip.
coming the
I'll
weeks to
dip
come.
into those into the well when Drew's back on the show, and I might not necessarily have a hard and fast statement, but still, I think an interesting discussion prompt, which is always entertaining.
I am gonna go back into the well and think of how we should do sports trivia because I'm hooked after this show. It could be one of those deals where we have like a rotating trivia question where each week one host comes up with a trivia question and the other two
I
got to
like that.
guess it. So it's not
I
like
like that because I
so
like
we all
both
get to
hunting
play.
for it, but also asking or like
Right.
trying to like get the answer. So yeah,
Right, because
I'm
we've
game for
had
that.
random sports trivia like 3 or 4 times on the show, and it's some of my favorite memories. I love sports trivia. I pride myself on being a trivia nerd. So I'll start thinking of how we can incorporate that into the show, and I'll go take a look at how our locks of the week are doing. As that'll do it for Salute Your Sports. Have a nice night, everyone, and we'll have college and NFL season previews in the weeks to come. Have a good one, everyone.